Attention! What you are about to listen to is not real. Anything you hear you don't have to worry about. No Karkans will come for you in your sleep, no dwarves will try to harass you, nothing. Just curl up in bed, grab a snack, turn down the light, and enjoy the third installment of Marek's journey across Jacklist. Without further ado, let us begin. Introduction. My name is Marek Magush, and I have made many journeys across the land of Jalkist. I have faced many perverted dangers in my time, but I've persevered through them all. My goal is to rid this land of the evil beings that rule over it called the Karkans, and bring peace and balance to it once more. Those dirty arse Karks. They've killed millions of people, and assaulted even more. They're even rumored to have planned the attacks on September 11, 2001. But that's no matter now. After I brutally railed one of the three-head Karkans, Squillup, from the back in my previous adventure, it was time to go for the rest of the Karkan scum. My devious plan in this episode of my journey would be to ride my dwarf into battle, and bring the whole army of Jalkist with me. Together we would fuck the living life out of all the Karkans, and finally be free of their erotic reign. But first, my journey would lead me back through the perilous swamps of the Mortimer Mire. Chapter 1. A Tale Straight Out of Alabama. Who goes there? I shouted into the mysterious fog in front of me. I sure do hope nobody comes out of this mysterious fog and comes and fucks me, I moaned, quite a bit louder than I had intended to. It was a dark evening, and a slight drizzle had kicked my ass in. I quickly turned around, as I thought I had heard the shouts of the children I kept in my basement, but quickly I realized it was just my imagination. Good memories, I thought to myself. Continued on through the Mortimer Mire, and quickly set up a camp for the night as the perfectly white moon began to creep through the clouds. If only everyone could be as perfect as the moon. I laid down my bedroll, made completely out of dried frog skin and dragon hair. What a wild last few weeks, I thought as I lay down on my unusually clammy bedroll. I could feel it still panting. I was mostly thinking about the time I had at that elf bar I had visited just a while earlier, but also about how I had managed to slay one of the girthiest creatures in our land, a Karkan by the name of Squillup. I then started having extreme asthma attacks, and almost died because of it. I'm so dyslexic. Right after I finished, a dark outline began to take shape in the nearby fog. "Passe, don't hit me from the back," I yelled at the mysterious shape, but it was too late. The creature rushed at me, made me bite the curb, and subjugated me in a very painful position. "I want you," it whispered into my ear. I screamed, but it was too late. He had already sent me to Alabama by the time I could say, breached. Chapter 2. A Journey to a Nice Long Piece of Meat. I woke up, with a great pain in my back. What happened last night? I thought hazily. I tried to get up, but instantly fell back down. You see, I am quite the meaty subject. I yelled as I hit my head on a rock that was as hard as mine. Come to think of it, this right here may be the reason I got diagnosed with autism later in life. Never mind that, however. After recovering from my fall, I packed my things and prepared to leave the Mortimer Mire, and make my way to the rotund ridges of the peaks of Tobiah. It was one of the biggest mountain ranges in Jalkist, only being beaten by the porky pillars of Mount Nicholas III. The Cartards would pay for what they've done, I thought as I began to march past the last few scraggly trees of the Mortimer Mire. I could see my destination in the distance, but I could also see a town on my way there. I realized I could stock up on plenty of meat for the journey I knew I would have to make, and decided that would be my first stop. I frolicked through the fields of flowers, before my asthma started to kick in again, and before I knew it, I was at the village gate. Hello, village of Dash. I paused for a moment, then quickly looked over to a sign that was planted in the dirt. Hello to the village of Pedophilia, I shouted to what I assumed was a guard on the walls far above me. When no response came, I began to worry. Why weren't the guards on duty? Had something happened to this poor village? I greasily slid my way over to the drawbridge that appeared to be broken to bits. Strange, I thought to myself, why would they break their own bridge? I began to turn away to try and find another way into the village, when I heard a gruff voice from in the water far below. You should try my meatballs, it whispered creepily. Just then I began to have flashbacks of a previous encounter with a horrifying creature I had met before. I swore I had taken my PTSD meds before leaving that morning. Why yes, I would love to try your meatballs, I shouted back at the mysterious entity. Then come stick them in your mouth. As the being shouted this, a giant tentacle shot out of the water and snatched my bong out of my backpack. I need that, I shouted at the monster. Then come get it, it replied nastily. I jumped into the water below and began a tussle with the creature. Come over here and kiss me on my hot mouth, the beast screamed into my already quite damaged eardrum. Give me back my bong, I shouted at the grotesque being. After I dismantled the creature's tentacles, and had some odd thoughts about them, I quickly cornered the beast and demanded that he return the Zaza maker at once. But you didn't even try my meatballs, the creature whimpered quietly. I ignored his remark, and quickly proceeded to shove my sword deep up his ass, twisting it around as I did so. And that's what those dirty carkers get, I spat. I then climbed up out of the moat, and proceeded to enter the abandoned-looking town. Chapter 3, a quite peculiar look into Marek's past. As I turned down a dark and creepy alleyway, I noticed a little building on the edge of town. From what I could read, it seemed to make out Vashon's yeehaw fortune-telling. I decided to go inside and look for anything that may help me on my journey. The first thing I noticed was a little pile of gnome corpses in the corner that were labeled for religious and other purposes. I shuddered, and quickly busted one in the corner. After I had cleaned up, I continued to look around. There were jars of things I had never even seen before. Toenail of Wilkie, twisted spinal cord of Tilden, bone dust of Stone, but even more peculiar was something labeled as gaseous spirit. I shoved it in my bag, deciding I would investigate later. After I was done looking around the bottom floor, I decided to go upstairs. The stairs led to a hallway with 3 doors. The first 2 were just filled with crates, presumably containing more magical substances, if you know what I mean, but the third one had something very different. In the corner of the room, on a little carpet, was a shriveled old woman who, in my opinion, looked exactly like my 8th grade social studies teacher. In front of the woman was a crystal ball that was glowing a nasty pasty green color. You wish to see the future, the crusty husk whispered slyly. But to do that, you must first take a gander into your past, she continued ominously. At first I didn't know what she meant, but I quickly figured it out. She placed her mummified hand onto my forehead, and I was instantly rushed back into a memory of the past. In this memory, I was living with my previously living parents in the city of Jakov. This was before they got shot up in the drive-by of dwarfs, and it was a simpler time, a more peaceful time. That was at least what I thought until I saw what this memory actually was. Wakish, went my father's whip. Get me another beer, he drunkenly yelled in my face. Yes, master, I fearfully replied, and got up to go crack another cold one for my father. And make it snappy, I need to be ready when my dealer comes by. I silently cried to myself and brought my father another beer. Now go shine my shoes and prepare supper. I did as I was told, and the memory began to fade. The husky woman remarked. It seems you were subjugated as a child. I looked at her with my two beastly eyes, and squinted. And it seems you'll be subjugated as an old woman. All that was heard coming from that little ramshackle building afterwards were the screams and cries of a disemboweled grandma that eventually turned to silence. That was a nice snack, I thought, but now it's time for the real meal. Chapter 4. Multiple very questionable remarks on Marek's behalf. I greedily licked my lips and made my way further into town. I planned on making a stop at a market where I could finally find some meat for my journey and be on my way. Before I found one, however, I found myself outside a Kark church where people used to worship the Karkans. There won't be anything to worship after I'm done with them, I thought, having my peak main character moment in this whole series. I grimily continued down the dirt road until I found myself in the center of town. An old statue of the Karkan leader, Kaja, came all over your face, that was cracked and mossy. I walked around it, and found a nice stall full of old meat. Perfect! I screamed. I devoured most of it, and shoved the rest of the raw, greasy meat into my pocket for safekeeping. Now that I had satiated my desire for a long, raw piece of meat, I could continue my quest into the rotund ridges of the peaks of Tobiah. There, I thought, I will find the relic that will help me unite Jalkist and free this land. Just then, I heard a slight rustling in the bushes. I drew my flaxen sword, plugged both my ears, and screamed, as loud as I could, "I didn't want to eat." The thing in the bushes seemed to be surprised by this and jumped out in fright. A nasty dwarf, I ejaculated. I fumbled my sword, as I had severe PTSD from these beings, but was able to pull out my dwarf whistle from my backpack, and blew as hard as I could. FFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFFF at the mouth. Why am I turned on by this? I wondered. No matter, as the dwarf had quickly got up with a glazed look over his eyes. I mounted the previously wild dwarf and drew my whip. Wakish! Onward, my noble steed, I shouted into the air. He took off at full gallop towards the back entrance of the town. Before I could bust down the back gate of the village, however, a small dark creature appeared in front of me. I pulled on the reins of my dwarf and he came to a halt. I got off and realized the dark creature in front of me was really just a small African-American child. Oh, that's not what I expected, and put away my long, raw, flaccid sword. Master, won't you please help me? My whole family has perished and I'm all alone, I have no one. The small child had a sad look in his eyes, and I almost felt bad. Keyword, almost. Hell no, I have much better things to do, I retorted. Why won't you adopt me? The child asked. I'm not gonna say it. Why won't you adopt me? Because you're black. At this last word, my voice boomed so loud, people all over Jalkist awoke with fright, as it had gotten dark at this time, and they all shuddered in fear of the loud racist cry that had echoed over the land. The child fell backwards at the force of my voice and kind of just disappeared, as it was so dark I couldn't see him anymore. I quickly fled the scene on Dwarfback and left the village far behind. Chapter 5. A very white creature just Kaja came everywhere. After that somewhat traumatic experience in the village of pedophilia, I decided I would try to avoid any more interactions with the locals of Jalkist. I was wanted in 30 states, 50 provinces, and over 300 countries after what they heard me say. That was, until I had to bring them together to defeat the Karkans. For now, I would make my journey into the mountains to fulfill my quest. After a grueling 3 days, I arrived at the base of the mountain and began to make my way up. Quickly, as you can expect, my asthma kicked in. This is the main reason I haven't been outside in over 5 years, and also the main reason I'm so fat. Where's my McDonald's? I shouted so loud, I thought the legend of Fatty Apple itself would strike me down. Then I thought about something a bit more deep. What was I going to do after Kaja came inside of the Karkans? Where would I go? My abusive parents were dead, I had no siblings, and I was so repulsive you could have mistaken me for one of the Karkans themselves. Jiggle jiggle. What? Who said that? Jiggle jiggle, it went again. It was KCO. Unfortunately, due to lack of funding, this is where Marek's journey will end for now. If you guys want another installment of his saga, get this video 600 billion likes and get me in contact with Sabrina Carpenter and I may be able to figure something out. Anyways, thank you for watching the whole video this far, and go check out the first 2 videos in this saga with the link in the description. Cue the dubstep.